Today I'm going to talk about some of the most common mistakes for design business owners, freelancers, or any kind of creative professionals trying to grow their own business. I've been working independently for about 4 years now. I've worked as a freelancer, I've started an agency, and I've gotten to work with a ton of clients from a bunch of different industries. And believe me that I've made all the mistakes possible along the way. So this is my attempt at making the video I would have liked to show myself if I could travel back in time, so I could shorten my learning curve and hopefully avoid some unnecessary stressful situations. The first mistake I want to talk about is neglecting your online presence. So I know it can be hard to balance your current client projects with building up your own marketing and your own brand, especially when you're just starting out, you don't have high-paying clients, and you're struggling and doing everything on your own. You need to understand that better clients and better opportunities, they don't just come by themselves. So low-paying clients usually attract other low-paying clients. And if you want to get different results, you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over. This is why it's so important that you break out of this hamster wheel and start marketing yourself effectively if you want to grow your business as a designer. It's easy to put our own business goals at the end of our priority list, and we kind of do this subconsciously, but that's because if you're working on a client project and you miss a deadline, then you're probably going to lose that client or not get paid. But if you miss your own deadline, then you don't feel the consequences immediately. It's these small things that compound over time and can lead your business to stagnate if you don't take care of them. So that's why I'd suggest doing exactly the opposite, which is by no means easy, but that's allocating specific time or setting specific goals for your own business and prioritizing that over everything else. So let's say that, for example, you dedicate Mondays for creating content for social media or for your website, so you can block out that time and handle everything else later. I mean, let's face it, if you're not happy with where your business is right now, the best thing you can do is working on your business to break out of this cycle and start attracting the clients that you actually want so you can get your business to a place that you're comfortable with. Another common mistake, and I'm definitely guilty of this, is not saying no enough. Saying no to projects isn't always easy or even possible. Especially when you're just starting out and you're just struggling to pay the bills, you're going to want to take on every single project that you can. But believe me, anytime I've ignored red flags from a client and agreed to the project anyway, I've always ended up regretting it, and it has not been worth the money. There's some questions that you can ask yourself before you start engaging with a new client, and that's, does their business look legitimate? How do they treat their employees? Do they respect your time? Do they value your opinions, or do they always think they know more than you? And do they push back aggressively on your prices? So this is interesting because it's pretty normal for people to ask for a discount or to have a budget that they need to stick to. But when you see a client aggressively push back and do that in a way that doesn't respect your work, like, oh, how are you going to charge this amount if this is only going to take you 10 minutes or blah, blah, that kind of thing, then that's certainly a red flag that you should definitely avoid. So before you start a new project, you should try and look at things objectively and try to avoid working with clients that aren't a good fit for you. If not, all you'll manage to do is build resentment towards your clients and towards the work and end up hating your job, which is not fun at all. And another thing that isn't fun at all is being stuck in an endless cycle of revisions. And yes, we've all been in revision hell, where you send over a design, the client doesn't like it, you change something, and the cycle repeats over and over until you both compromise on this distorted version of the design that both of you hate. I think a good way to frame this is that you shouldn't let your client become your art director. So what I try and do is keep the conversations top level, keep them more focused on the business goals and not so much focused on the details of the design. Also, it's really important to define the scope of work and the number of revisions before you start, like in your contract. So what this does is that it gives the client a clear idea of what the process is going to be. And obviously, if they're going to have to pay more for extra revisions, then that incentivizes the number of revisions to be as low as possible. And basically, it's better for everyone. This comes down to your design process, and that ties into the next mistake I want to talk about, which is not having clear processes. Having strong processes in place is a vital part of any business, and design is no exception to this. Yes, of course, you want to leave room for creativity and spontaneity, but you also don't want to be reinventing the wheel with every new project you start. Having a clear process will help you be more efficient, it'll help you to delegate, and it'll also help you to communicate your value to your clients. It helps a lot when you can explain to a client what your design process is like and give them a timeline, so that way they know what to expect and they'll feel more secure, which can help set you apart from other options they might have. Another important mistake to avoid is having unclear communication. Before you start working with a client, you want to have a brief, a scope of work document, a contract, and have as many details as you can laid down. But it doesn't end there. It's pretty common that sometimes things will deviate from the initial scope of work. So imagine you've got a budget for a website you're building, and suddenly the client wants to add a bunch of extra pages. So you agree to this over the phone, but you don't put it down in writing. A few days later, you deliver the work, but imagine that person's changed their opinion or they don't work at the company anymore. So that's where having a written confirmation in an email is really important. One thing I do before I go into revisions or extras on a project is I'll summarize it in an email and send it to the client. So then you can say that it's just your company policy that you need a confirmation to that email. So even if they reply with just an okay, then that's all you need to start working. And I think this is a pretty simple thing to do, but believe me, it can save you a ton of headaches down the line. The next mistake is selling to yourself. As a designer, you're probably going to be more interested in talking about fonts and colors than talking about sales and ROI. But it's important to remember that we're working for our clients and not for other designers. We need to be thinking about what our clients' pain points are. Because if you're building a new website for them, for example, it's probably not just because they want a nicer and flashier website. They probably want to sell more, they probably want to get more clients, increase their conversions. So those are the business goals that you've got to keep in mind. This mistake kind of sums up some of the previous ones, and that's having an employee mindset. This can be a consequence of imposter syndrome, where you doubt your own opinions or your own expertise, especially when you've been working as an employee for someone else, or if you're naturally more of an introvert and a less assertive person by nature. What's helped for me is thinking of the situation from the client's perspective. As a client, usually what you want is an expert that can give you a solid opinion and guide you through the process and give you as much confidence as possible. You don't want to be giving instructions to someone about something that you know nothing about. Don't expect guidance or direction from your client. You should ask the right questions up front and outline the process as clearly as possible so they feel they can trust you and that they don't have to micromanage every last detail. If they suggest something you don't agree with, then you can just tell them. Your clients are going to respect you more if you can provide a valuable expert opinion instead of just saying yes to everything. And the last point I want to make in this video is that theory is nothing without practice. So get out there and fail fast, fail often, but always fail forward. See you in the next one.